Good afternoon, students. So today we'll see the second chapter of the third module, it's authentication 1. So first we'll see the introduction part, in which we are going to see what do you mean by authentication and how the authentication is categorized. So authentication is a process in which principal proves that he, she or it is the entity it claims to be. The principal is referred to as the prover, while the party to whom proof is submitted identity verification is called as verifier. So here authentication is nothing but the proving of the identity of a particular person to some other party with whom we want to have a communication. Authentication may be based on what the principal knows. For example, it may be a password or a paraphrase, or has an identity card or a passport, for example. A principal is often a human, a computer, an application, or a robot. In case of a human principal, authentication may use physical characteristics such as voice, a fingerprint, retinal scan, or even a DNA sample. So this form of authentication is referred to as biometric authentication. With password-based authentication, an individual is often expected to communicate his or her password to a verified entity. In some cases, it may not be advisable for individual to reveal his or her password. Instead, he or she may be required to perform some one-way cryptographic operation using his or her secret, which cannot be performed without the knowledge of it. Finally, many authentication systems today use a combination of techniques. So this is referred as multi-factor authentication. So this authentication is categorized into two types in this chapter. One we call it as a one-way authentication, another is a mutual authentication. So in one-way authentication, we are going to see the two types. One is a password-based authentication and another is a certificate-based authentication. And in mutual authentication, we are going to see three types. First one is a shared secret-based authentication, asymmetric key-based authentication, and third one is a authentication and a key agreement. So we'll see in detail these types of authentication. So first one is a one-way authentication. So in client-server communication over a campus network, for example, it is often the case that the client authenticates itself to the server. The server may or may not be authenticated to the client. So this is referred to as one-way authentication. Here, only the client authenticates itself to the server, whereas the server is not authenticating himself to the client. So in this case, what exactly problem arises that the server may be a fake server or invalid server, and it may be providing the services to the legal client. So in this we are going to see the two types of one-way authentication techniques. One is a password-based authentication and another is a certificate-based authentication. So first we'll see what is a password-based authentication. So one of the most common mechanism to implement authentication is the password. To log in to a server, a user enters his or her login name and a password, as you can see in the first figure. The password is the secret that is known only to the user and the server. The login name identifies a user, while the user's knowledge of the corresponding password constitutes proof that he or she is the person with the given login name. Now, if you see the figure, the server uses the login name Alka to index into a database of login name password. Here, the client has used a name, login name as Alka, and the password is like this one. The server is going to maintain the table of all the users who will be using the services of this server with this login name and a password. So as soon as the client enters this information, it is going to search that information in the table, and if the match is found, then the server comes to know that he is an authenticated client. So it verifies that the submitted password matches the one which is stored against the Alka. So the drawback of this is that the password is sent in the clear, so an attacker can eavesdrop the message containing the password and later impersonate the real user. And second one is that the passwords are stored in an unencrypted form in a file on the server. So if an internal attacker obtains access to that file, all passwords stored on that server could get compromised. So we need to overcome this problem. So now if you see in the second chapter, instead of storing or sending the password in a clear format, we'll be using a hashing technique so as to send the password. So the cryptographic hash of the password is stored on the server, and also the logging software prompts the user for his or her password, compute its hash value which is to be transmitted. The one-way property of the cryptographic hash helps prevent an attacker from deducing user passwords from information in the password file or from communication on the transmission line. So here another problem that can arise is that attacker could snoop on the communication between Alka and the server and obtain the hash of the password. He can at a later time replay it to the server, thus impersonating Alka. Such an attack in which one plays back all or a part of one or more previous messages with the intent of impersonating a legitimate user is called as a replay attack. So in this password based authentication, so there is a possibility of a replay attack. So for that, so as to avoid this replay attack, we'll be using another technique or another protocol called as challenge response protocol. So an effective strategy to come across or to thwart a replay attack is for the verifier to offer a fresh challenge to the prover. In response, the client does not communicate its password, but rather than proves that it knows the password. The server is thus able to verify whether the client is genuine or not. The freshness of a challenge requires previous response to answer the current challenge. Such an authentication protocol is commonly referred to as challenge response protocol. So, in this we are going to see how exactly this challenge response protocol we can use it in a one-way authentication. And if you see the figure 1, in the first message, A conveys its identity to B. The second message contains the challenge from the server. The challenge is a random number called as a nonce. The third message is the client's response, which is a function of the challenge and the password. The function f of pw, r is going to have the following properties. Given x and y, it should be easy to compute. If f is a one-way, so knowing f of pw, r and r, it should be infeasible to compute the pw. So given an r, it should be infeasible to compute f of pw, r even if the values will be known to the user. So in the second one, for the function f, we have used the cryptographic hash, which is applied over the concatenation of the password and the nonce. Instead of applying a function, we have used a hash function to the password as well as the nonce. So in the third figure, what exactly we use is a secret key encryption where the password is used as a key for encryption of a random number. So here in the third one, we have used the encryption technique for sending the nonce, that is sending the reply from the A to the server, and for which we have used password as a key. So in the last figure, the challenge sent by the sender is in an encrypted form. So the client would need to decrypt the challenge to obtain the nonce and return it to the server to prove the knowledge of his or her password. So here, when A sends the identity to the server generates the random number, which is a nonce, which the server sends to A in an encrypted form. Then once it is received to A, A decrypts it, gets the nonce, and then that nonce is sent to the server in a clear format. So this is what a password based authentication. So second type of one-way authentication is a certificate based authentication. So in the certificate based authentication, in the first figure, that is A, the first message is a certificate chain which A client need not share a secret with a server but sends a public key certificate. A sends her certificate in message 1. Then B performs certain checks such as on the validity period and the name of the principal. Then he also verifies the signature of a certification authority on the certificate. So after verifying the details of the certificate which is received from A, then the server sends the nonce, that is his challenge, to the A in form of a message 2. Then in message 3, A responds by encrypting the challenge with her private key. So when B receives this nonce in encrypted format, then as in the previous message, already B knows the A's public key, so that B uses the A's public key to decrypt this message and gets the nonce value, and that nonce value will be compared with the previous message which the server sends to the client, and if the match is found, then the server confirms the identity of a A. So in the second figure, so there is a slight variation. Instead of sending the nonce in a clear format from server to A, the server encrypts the nonce with the public key of A. And that encrypted value will be sent to A, as A knows her private key. So that private key will be used by A, decrypts the message, gets the nonce, and that nonce will be sent back to the server in form of a clear format. That is what the second type of authentication, which is a certificate based authentication. So next one we'll see, it's another type of authentication which is a mutual exclusion. It is often necessary for both communicating parties to authenticate themselves to each other. So in the one-way authentication, only the client is going to authenticate itself to the server, but not the both way. So in this we are going to see that both the communicating parties need to authenticate themselves to each other. For example, in internet banking, it is imperative that a customer interacts with his or her bank and not some entity posing as the bank. So likewise, it is important that a bank need to verify the identity of the customer. So that will be done by using the one-time password to the customer's mobile number. Once the customer enters that password, the bank will consider that it is a legitimate user. So in this way, we are going to see the 4 points. First one is a shared secret based authentication. Next one is a symmetric key based authentication, authentication and key agreement, and use of timestamp. So we'll see these 4 points in detail. So first one is a shared secret based authentication. So in this one, now if you see a figure, first a client A communicates its identity and its challenge in the form of nonce are A to B. So that is what a first message, it will be sent from A to B. So next, B responds to the challenge by encrypting RA with a common secret key K that A and B shares. As is a secret based authentication, so before starting the communication, both A and B, they have already shared a secret key, and that secret key, they use it for encrypting the nonce generated by themselves. Then B also sends its own challenge RB to A. Then when the A receives this information, A's response to B's challenge in the third message appears to complete the protocol for mutual authentication, but there are some serious flaws in it. So what are the flaws? We'll see. So that we call it as a parallel session attack. Suppose an attacker C sends a message to B containing a nonce RA and claiming to be E. Then B responds to the challenge with encrypting the value of a RA with a secret key and its own challenge RB as required by the above protocol. Now C attempts to connect to A claiming it to as B by preparing a one more message, which is a message dash with a challenge RB. Now note that this is the same challenge offered to it by B in a message 2. Now another message is prepared from the client, that is A responds to the challenge with a RB encrypting with a shared key and a nonce of its own. Then C uses A's response to complete the 3-message authentication protocol with B. So here by using this, what exactly the attacker C has accomplished? C has successfully impersonated A to B. Message 3 was required to complete the authentication of C to B. C initiated the authentication protocol with A, presenting to A the same challenge it had received from B. A's response to the challenge in message 2 dash was used by C to convince B that it was A and was trying to establish communication with A. So this attack is termed as reflection attack. Now in this case, the reflected message fragment, that is EK of RB, this attack is called as parallel session attack. So then how to overcome from this attack, we'll see in the next slide, which is a corrected protocol. So the protocol might require the responder to encrypt his challenge while the initiator would be required to decrypt her challenge. So that is what a main case. So when A sends the identity and a challenge, then the B has to send his own challenge in the encrypted form instead of in a clear format. So second one is a asymmetric key based authentication. So in this, we assume that both A and B have the public key private key pairs. The notation yum of A means a message yum sent together with A's signature on yum. So in the protocol, each party transmits its own nonce and challenges the other to sign it. So now if you see in the figure A shows that mutual authentication using public key cryptography or asymmetric based authentication. So in the message 1, the identity of A, the challenge sent by A, which is RA, and the A's certificate will be sent to B. So B verifies the parameters or the details which are available in A's certificate. Then the string obtained by concatenating A, RA and RB signed by B along with the B certificate will be sent into A. So when the A receives the second message, RB is the challenge signed by A, which is encrypted by using the A's private key, and that will be sent into B. So in this way, they will have the challenge response protocol. So here the type of attack which can be happen on the previous slide was a flawed protocol. So what is that exactly flawed protocol? We'll see. First one, A initiates a communication with the C sending the challenge RA. Then message 1 dash C initiates the communication with B by using the same nonce RA. Then B responds to A's challenge and includes a challenge of his own by communicating themselves and assigning it. Then C responds to A's challenge and uses B's random number RP as his challenge to A and then sends it to A. Then A responds to C's challenge, which was actually generated by B. A thus completes a mutual authentication protocol with the C, and then the same challenge is forwarded to A's response to B. So in this way, this type of attack may happen on this flawed protocol. So the solution to the above problem is for the entities to include the identity of the recipient in all messages which are sent. For example, if you see over here, the string which is obtained by concatenating nonce RA and RP, which is signed by B, is sent. Along with that, we have sent the identity of A also. So when the A receives it, then it generates a response which includes the challenge from the B, that is RP, identity of the B to whom he want to have a communication and from whom it has come, that is the private key of A, which is encrypted form. So this is what a solution. So next one is a authentication and key agreement. So in the previous section, authentication was performed by using operations involving a long-term shared secret or a private key. Since private key operations are very expensive, the communication can be integrity protected and or encrypted using short-term keys of the session key. So here we will be using the two session keys, one is SA and SB are the contributions to the secret key by A and B respectively. So they are freshly chosen random numbers that are encrypted and sent so that they cannot be eavesdropped upon the key. Finally chosen could be a simple function of SA and SB, that is S is equal to SA XOR SB. Now if you see here, so this figure shows the combined mutual authentication and key exchange. So this protocol provides both mutual authentication and a key agreement. If you see the first one, it uses secret cryptography, whereas the B uses the public key cryptography. In both the figures, SA and SB are the contributions to the secret key A and B. So they are freshly chosen random numbers that are encrypted and sent so that they cannot be eavesdropped on. So they are encrypted in message 2 and a message 3 by the shared secret key K. And they are, so in the figure 2, they are encrypted in message 2 and message 3 using the recipient's public key. Now if you see this SA and SB is encrypted by using the secret key which is shared between A and B, and in this it is encrypted by using, here is A's public key and here is a B's public key. So the next one is the use of timestamp. The use of nonces was introduced to prevent replay attacks. Basically, each party generates a nonce which is used as a fresh challenge to the other party. The recipient is often expected to sign or encrypt the challenge using a secret known to only the recipient. The key idea here is the freshness of the nonce. If nonces were reused, the response to the challenge could be replayed from a previous session. So, as an alternative to the nonces, we can make use of a timestamps. Ideally, by securely stamping a message with the current time, you convince the receiving party of its freshness. Now, if you see here in the first message which was sent from A to B, inserts a timestamp TA in her message which is signed and then sends it. Then B, on the receiving the message, checks whether the timestamp is sufficiently recent and then verifies the signature. He increments the received timestamp, inserts it in his response message to A and signs the message. So in the same way, once they verifies the timestamp, they will have the further communication by making use of a secret key. So the last part of this chapter is a dictionary attack. So dictionary attacks are typically launched in the context of passwords. Some passwords have too few characters. Other may be common celebrity names, place names, etc. Some individuals use permutation of characters in the names of their near relatives or friends so that they are easily memorizable. So based on such clues, an attacker can build a dictionary of strings which are potentially passwords of his or her victim. So there are two types of dictionary attacks. So one we call it as the online, another is called as the offline attack. So in online attack, an intruder attempts to log in to the victim's account by using the victim's login name and a guess password. So there is usually a system imposed limit on the number of failed login attempts. So unless the attacker is particularly insightful or lucky, an online attack has a limited chance of success. So in the offline attack leaves few fingerprints. One possibility for an attacker to get a hold of the password file. Passwords are typically transformed in some way, that is by performing some cryptographic hash on them before being stored on the authentication server. The cryptographic hash is a one-way function, so it is not easy for the attacker to deduce the password given its cryptographic hash. So another possibility for the attacker is to eavesdrop on the communication link during the authentication. Then the attacker could make use of some algorithm so as to guess the passwords. This is what exactly the chapter authentication 1.